Hello and welcome to the Plastic Crack the Plastic Crack podcast on your, I couldn't even get through the first sentence, on your Monday night, season 5, episode 39. We're chatting to James Morris, author of Midgard, and we've been looking forward to this, haven't we, guys? James, who is responsible for the national goblet shortage of 2024.
Definitely. Hang on, did you say Midgard? I thought it was this one. I thought it was that one we were talking about tonight. That one?
Years ago.
Damn, I've been reading the wrong one.
The question is, are those goblets full? That's what they're going to be asking in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys, for coming along and joining us on Monday night. We are going to be chatting to James about how he got into wargaming, the things that James has worked on, the projects he's worked on, and of course Midgard, which has been sweeping through the forums and the Facebook group. There is a bit of a frenzy, isn't there? Every couple of posts, it does the M word is there. So we're going to have a chat all about that. If you guys have questions, pop them in there. Dom, with his eagle eyes, who I'm now drafting in to do it, will be keeping an eye out.
Pay attention.
And he'll be starring those. So do pop those in. Of course, we are sponsored by our friends over at Boards and Swords. And if you go over there, they will give you a 5% discount off their already discounted stuff if you put in the now famous code, which has never changed, PCP5. One day we'll ask him to change it, but then everyone will forget it. So, there we go. Of course, welcome if you are watching on the replay. And I've seen quite a few names and faces of, I think this might be a few people's first time. So welcome. Thank you for coming over and spending your evening with us. And yeah, all that good stuff. Is everyone all right? Is everyone enjoying the start of November?
Yeah. We're mid-November, aren't we? Well, it's the 11th of November.
11th, yeah.
I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful my plague's gone. I'm not ill anymore. It's great. Well, I'm still a bit stuffy, but I don't know what it was. Kicked the absolute crap out of me for the past 2 weeks, though. Awful.
Yeah, I'm doing good, I think. Back to the painting, which is always fun. So yeah, I'm good.
Are you painting? Yeah, we've got a game planned for Friday, haven't we?
We're gonna
do. It's gonna be some Wars of the Roses, aren't they? You busy painting reinforcements?
No. I did that one unit, which I'll show you later on. But no, nothing else. I've got more than enough, Martin. We got more than enough.
I knew it. Didn't I say that someone was going to ask? Are those goblets full? That was
not anymore.
Absolutely right then. Well, what we'll do. We will have you guys know how the format works when we have a guest on, so we're going to take a bit of a while here. We'll have a chat with James about his wargaming history and how he got into it. We'll do a little bit of a project roundup and give him a breather and decide if he actually wants to stay for the next hour and a half. And we'll have your wargaming news, and then if we have time, we will get round to the viewers' pictures. So I guess the main thing, James, would be just to say, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Slightly bizarre, to be honest with you, but brilliant. My name's James Morris. I have been gaming for God knows how long, quite a long time. Martin's got some great amounts of
I think this was the
I was described on the I think on the blurb for Midgard we put from veteran gamer James Morris. I'm not sure I'm not the oldest of our gaming group for sure, and I'm not sometimes as old as I feel, but I've had a great time just throughout my life being involved in gaming, miniatures, model making, wargaming and so forth, and I absolutely love the hobby. And I've gone through all kinds of phases doing all kinds of games, but I've consistently done gaming, got into writing stuff a number of years ago, and then of course I've got into writing rules as well. So yeah, Martin, that photo you just put up, that was me in the shed. Oh, and that's me in my painting cupboard now, literally.
As you say, and as you've written, not changed a bit is what you've labelled this photo. That's amazing.
I'm afraid it's true. That was taken a couple of years ago. That's just me in my painting cupboard. I've just got a computer
cupboard. James, that really is a proper.
Yeah, I
like
obsessively make stuff. So actually, it's really good that I'm a war gamer and not, something else, because I can obsessively make stuff and do something with it, which I really enjoy. So I was going to talk about my gaming influences, I guess. I mean, do you want to put the next slide up, Martin? Have you got influences?
Yeah. Yes, I do. There we go.
We were chatting about this before we came on the show. Yeah, I'm kind of an 80s kid, really. When I was a child, I mean, I was into Lord of the Rings. My mum said there was a Lord of the Rings BBC radio serial on Radio 4 in the 70s, and my mum said I was glued to it, even though I must have been about 5 or whatever. And then the exposure to that kind of thing, that the key thing, I think, really was the Fighting Fantasy game books. You can see Forest of Doom there, which was my first game book. Those were absolutely just magnetic for me as a kid, and the fact you could get them through the school book club as well was absolutely awesome.
Those were the days.
Yeah. And White Dwarf really was the main conduit with information in. Back then, of course, as it says in the header there, it says the Role-Playing Games Monthly, and it was. Whilst it was always owned by Games Workshop was a very different animal and had a whole portfolio of role-playing games that it published. So that really was mine and my friends' monthly dose of gaming information. And it's kind of, I'm going to sound really old here, but we had TV, but with no internet, no YouTube and whatever. Actually getting news about this stuff would either be see one of your mates had got, or you'd read about it in White Dwarf. So it was absolutely huge. And yeah, AD&D, the original Monster Manual, with fab artwork. Yeah, we have one of those in our school library, and we all used to rush up there to read it. So these were really early influences on me, I guess, as a gamer. And then I've been collecting plastic toy soldiers, Airfix, Matchbox, that kind of stuff. But I always liked swords. And Airfix was a bit limited on the sword front.
We were having a chat before Dom and Steve joined the sort of like the green room, if you like, at the start. We were having a bit of a chat, weren't we, James, about our about the conversation we were having the other day about how I don't like painting anything mechanical, but you give me an intricate suit of armor, I'm more than happy to sit there for hours. Or a sword, which is ultimately more interesting than the MP40 that someone sent me a picture of following that stream. Thank you for the picture, by the way, the person that sent it.
I'm not going to fight anybody over that, especially not with my sword. But yeah, so we were mucking around with this kind of stuff. I actually did an attempted war game using the Fighting Fantasy system on my parents' kitchen table, which involved some plastic dinosaurs, some Prince August figures, some citadel figures, and some caves I'd made out of clay. Sadly, there are no photos of this event. But then
that sounds like the thing Steve used to do, or still does, to be honest.
Still do.
Yeah. I'm not going to knock it. There's a brilliant Facebook group, Super Cheap Wargaming. I love it. There's amazing stuff on there. Anyway, Martin, you should have a picture called First Warhammers, because
I do. Yes.
There it is. This was the game changer.
Oh yeah.
So this is my Warhammer era. So 1983. The first Warhammer came out. I think it was $4.95 or something for that greeny box set on the left. It was all in black and white, but it was just a revelation. And you'll have seen me kind of posting the pictures of me gaming with Rick Priestley the other day. And, such a honor is the only word really, to come full circle and to play a game using my game with one of the guys who got me into it 40 years ago, basically. So yeah, we played Warhammer. Warhammer Second Edition came out really quickly. That's the box in the middle. The first edition was only 3,000 print run, I think, and then that sold out. And Brian Ansell, by then, basically they got a second one out which had more colour in it and so forth. And then 1987, Warhammer 40k came out, Rogue Trader as it was called back then. And these I think probably are the three key war games in my teenage years, or actually pre-teenage years in the case of the first editions of Warhammer. But we played the hell out of them because they were designed to play with miniatures. And they were just so full of creativity and excitement. And you may be, if you're someone who got into the Warhammer from kind of 90s onwards, you may be a bit shocked to find out that Warhammer First Edition did not have any army lists. It was not, there were rules. And indeed, the third book in the rules was actually about using it as a role-playing game. But it was a project that evolved. Brian Ansell, I think, had always dreamed of this vertical sales model he talked about, whereby you have the rules that sell the figures, that sell the supplements, that sell the figures, And but there were no army lists. They didn't release any army lists until Ravening Hordes in the second edition. So for the first couple of years, we were just playing with whatever the hell we liked. There were some examples in the books, but the level of creativity was totally up there with role-playing game stuff, where you're rolling up your first D&D character. And that's always stuck with me. And I think you'll find there's a little element of that going into Midgard.
I was going to say, now
definitely.
we've been lucky enough to see the PDF of the rules and have a read. And I was about to say that what you're talking about there is definitely, as you said, there's hints of that coming through, especially with the army creation and just the general formation of the way that a game is played, as well, and the way that the narrative comes together as you're playing. No, that's fantastic. You've I've just seen that this one has a date on it, so I'm going to put up this photo, and then I'll tell you how old I was. So I was 4 years old. At this point, Martin? I was 4 years old when this photo was taken.
That's all right. I'm not as old as I think I know. This is 1988. That is me removing a dead figure from a melee. Sadly, you can't see me. You can see my amazing CNA jumper. CNA, is CNA still in existence? I guess
I remember it. I do remember being dragged around.
I'm not sure it's even an internet brand anymore. It's that old.
My parents, I think, always encouraged me to create it, but they were very bemused by the whole Warhammer thing. They went along with it, but anyway, they bought a table tennis table to play table tennis on, and I can just tell you, no table tennis got played on that table on Sunday afternoon. So that's us playing a big Warhammer game in about 88, so I'm about 15, 16 there, I guess. I made the palisade out of balsa wood. There's amazing cliffs. You can see they're made out of polystyrene. On the right, the roads have been done with sand. It's all a bit basic, but by God, it was fun. And that never really left me. So awesome. There we go. And there's another one.
Oh wow, look at that. That's brilliant.
I was pretty pleased with that, age 16 or whatever. I'd got some polystyrene. I'd made some cliff sections. All the houses are cutouts, ones that Dave Andrews used to make. They were given away with Citadel Journal or in some of the box sets or whatever. That's an original Mighty Fortress there, although that belonged to a friend. I was never rich enough to own that. I think the Siege Tower was a scratch built, actually. But that was what we were playing with. But it was a great start. My inconsiderate dad had put shelves, as you can see, at the back left of the table, so you couldn't actually play across the table. You had to play end to end, but it didn't stop us. But I really wished I'd had a club or something, or a wider community as a teenager, because there were a group of about 5 of us in my town who were into the same kind of stuff, and met up to play role-playing games and Warhammer and stuff, but we just didn't see anybody else. But I think that's where Games Day comes in. Do you want to go to the next picture, Martin?
Yeah, I will. Sorry, I was just uploading the. So James has been very kind and sent us lots of photos. So what I'm doing is getting them all.
You don't need to show them all now.
No, there we go.
Instamatic camera pictures. So I had a chat with Nick Eyre of North Star recently. So we were both at this show. We didn't know each other then. We only met when I moved to Nottingham 20 odd years ago, or whatever. But this is. I think it's the Royal Horticultural Society Hall. I can't remember which one. So Games Workshop used to run an event called Games Day in London. And back then, it was an absolute free-for-all. You had tabletop role players, you had Warhammer players, you had LARPers, it was everything going on. It was such a creative, fun event. It was a bit like, is it like Salute? No, it's hard to describe. But anyway, my mum, bless her, would take us down to London Games Day. I think it was September each year. All summer I'd work doing chores. I'd save up all my money, and then we'd go to Games Day, and I'd spend every single penny on wargaming miniatures. But and why wouldn't you? You know. And if you got to jump on the next picture, you can see some of the games from Games Day.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Games Day.
Yeah, this is not Kensington. There's not Kensington Town. Well, is the Royal Horticultural Society Hall in Kensington?
No, I don't think it is.
My mum did the navigation. I don't know where it was, but I know it was Royal Horticultural Society Hall. So this is 1989. So this is the year that 40k Road Trader was released, and this is one of the games being put on. And,
oh wow!
Yeah, really inspiring stuff.
That scenery is classic 40k all over. Absolutely.
Yeah,
brilliant.
It's really early as well, isn't it? You know, it's sculpted polystyrene.
Yeah.
You've got some kind of yogurt pots making the towers. You've got spacemanship. I think this has been put on by people from the Games Workshop Design Studio or possibly the Players Guild. And if you go on to the next picture, is there another picture of Games Day? There might be.
Yes. 40k. There we go. Yeah.
Oh no, this is me. Look, so there's me a few months later doing my own version thereof. So I've got some plastic kit of a spaceship. I've sprayed it black and white like I saw. I've got Space Marines and robbed some moss out of the garden and some marine plants and whatever. But yeah, but this stuff, you know, is a massive, massive dose of inspiration. And it's hard to emphasize how in the day of the internet where you can see pretty much everything before you buy it, that going to this show was awesome. And gradually it changed. 1989 was a big changer in that it became more corporate. I mean, I think it was always the plan with Games Workshop. It was always where Brian Ensel was going to take it. But gradually it became a more Games Workshop only event. You lost the LARPers, you lost the role players, you lost the additional traders and so forth that you had. People like Irregular Miniatures, you know, from York used to come down and trade at this. And I bought loads of their stuff. So yeah, it changed. But these early moments were very, very creative indeed, I think.
So this all laid a foundations for what was to come.
Yeah, totally and utterly. There's a couple more pictures of old figures we can look at really quickly if you want.
Yeah. Go for it. I mean,
this is like such a throwback. I love it. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we have. So on the left and far right, you have orcs sculpted by the Perry twins, pre-slaughter base orcs. Centre left by the pillar, you've got the Drastic Plastic Orc, which was their first go at plastic orcs. 3 for 75 pence, I believe. Anyway, immediately you can see I couldn't contain myself. I stuck 2 heads on one figure because it was too much fun not to. In the centre, there's a metal standard bearer from Acton Miniatures, I think, that I bought at a Games Day. And just to their right is an Uruk-hai from the original Games Workshop Lord of the Rings range from the 1980s. So Workshop did a 1980s Lord of the Rings range before the movie. So they did a licensed range, which obviously was totally based on their own imagery. And I collected quite a lot of that. That was kind of about 1984 Slaughter Base. But oh, wow. And here is a 1979 Ralpartha Bullrog. I've shown this before on the internet. Yes. Some people have shown an earlier version of this, who is slightly better endowed than this particular model. Usually growing number of 12-year-olds like myself who are buying workshop miniatures. This is one of my few original miniatures. Mate in the States sent it to me in the 80s. I absolutely love it. Nick Ayre.
I'm sure I had that model, but it was never that well painted.
Yeah. I think I did that when I was about 17. I think that's all right for being 17. That's Humbrol enamels as well. So, you know.
Nice. Real paint.
I always like doing art and painting stuff at school. And like I said, I've painted and built stuff obsessively. So you just get on and do it, basically, you know.
Okay. That is awesome. I mean, you've... What because I can see the next. I know what the next picture is. I know Dom won't forgive me because you sent it over, and I know Dom probably hasn't seen it in advance. So if I don't share this, Dom isn't going to forgive me. So you've entitled this folder "Adult Wargaming." Or was it Adult Wargaming? That might not be the exact name. Oh, for grown up, Adult Wargaming is something else. We won't talk about that. But
that's that other folder you don't go into, whatever you do.
The other folder. No one sent that folder. There we are. Now
yes. Oh,
so how did
talk us through quite a bit here? But yeah, in the 90s, I moved to Nottingham as a student, stayed basically because it's a bloody brilliant place to live. Yes, it also has the highest percentage of miniature figures, I think, anywhere on earth, and makers certainly. But yeah, and I played all kinds of historical war games. DBA, DBM, Armata, Fire and Fury, kind of stuff that was popular in the 90s. But WAB came out, and that was, I think, another major game changer. At my first Partisan show in '93, I ran into the Perry twins, Rick Priestley, Jervis Johnson, running a game. It wasn't even called WAB at that point. They were running a late Romans versus Picts game using the Foundry miniatures, and it was absolutely bloody stunning. It wasn't huge, but it was gorgeously done, and I just stood there and thought, this is what I want to do. Had a nice chat with them and so forth. And yeah, they did. It didn't get turned into Warhammer Ancient Battles for a few years. I think it came out in 98, 99, somewhere around about then. But I was kind of straight into that. And then because I already started writing articles for War Games Illustrated, I was well into the history. I just read an awful lot, really. And then got approached, started running WAB events, actually. We ran, not tournaments, we ran themed WAB events at the Newark Irregulars Clubhouse in Newark, which is no longer a thing. But my mate Steve Jones and I would run a themed event. So I've never been a big tournaments fan. I have nothing against them. But for me, I like thematic and narrative wargaming. I like to think about, okay, what are the key issues for King Arthur or whatever coming to this battle, rather than thinking, okay, how many units of comitatus can I afford to take, and how many elephants the Saxons bringing with them? That's kind of my mindset on the whole thing. So we ran themed events where people brought their own armies. We wrote a set of army lists and sent it out to people and said, right, here's a set of army lists that you're going to play with. We're running Age of Arthur or El Cid or Caesar versus Pompey or whatever. We'd run it as a themed event, and we'd get 16 players coming along, because we had 8 tables, 16 players coming along. We'd put out all the scenery, organise the scenarios, and then we'd play a themed campaign in a day. And this got onto the grapevine and whatever, and Rob Broom approached me then to do the El Cid book for Warhammer Ancient Battles, so that's kind of where that went. And then there he is, El Cid himself, cracking figure by Mark Copplestone, recently rediscovered, and he's now available from North Star, actually, for £7, which is pretty good for a Copplestone mounted figure nowadays. Yeah, El Cid anyway. So I got El Cid, and then also ended up writing the Age of Arthur book with my mate Steve Jones, which you can see there. And cover art you can see there. Cover art on that is by John Hodgson, who has also done the art and layout for Midgard Heroic Battles. So you can see the links. But he absolutely, John just captures the essence of legendary warfare in early medieval period so well. So obviously we wanted to keep them on. So if we jump through here now, I've got a surprising slide next is WAB at Warhammer Worlds.
Oh yes,
there it is.
Oh wow!
And actually, some of you may recognise the chap in the centre is Soapy, Gripping Beast sculptor, and cousin, I believe, of Natalie Dormer of Game of Thrones fame. Anyway, Soapy's a brilliant guy. I mean, the Gripping Beast, been mates with for absolutely years. They are some of the people who absolutely make the hobby tick. And what you may be surprised to see here is we are playing Warhammer Ancient Battles inside Warhammer World. And when Warhammer Ancient Battles was produced by Games Workshop, well, it was always produced by Games Workshop. But Rob Broom, who was the Warhammer historical manager for a number of years, could hire the venue to run themed events. And so we did. and they were legendary.
I went to a couple of those, James. I remember.
Did you?
I did a couple of
Okay,
doubles.
cool,
I think.
excellent.
Was there a doubles?
Yeah,
event?
right. Yeah,
I remember. Yeah, I did that for sure.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I keep running into people, who we've met, who were there and whatever at these events, and yeah, there we go. We've got
fantastic
figures
fun,
not
though,
made by
right?
Workshop inside Workshop, which
Yeah.
I think is a cougar. They were glorious. They were such great events, and we ran a number of themed campaigns with them. So you'd sign up to play a particular campaign and bring your figures, and they were very friendly. Little elements of competitiveness, but not silly. And it was always, good-natured fun. We'd go out for meals and whatever and drinks. It was just a really lovely.
I thought what was great about those events, like you say, people wanted to win their games, but it wasn't all about winning. It was having a laugh and rolling some dice and talking some rubbish and then taking the mickey out of your opponent in the pub
as
bar
you can
later
see
on.
right there.
Yeah.
That's
fantastic.
Tom Webster Deakin doing a great post photo. Well, there's an old Sid game from back then, using my old Sid terrain. We had so much fun doing those. The next picture, we may have missed the Newark one. Doesn't matter.
Oh, there we go. So StreamYard sometimes does this funny thing where it won't.
That's fine.
It won't
it's fine. This is one of our events in Newark. Again, one of these campaign days, and there have been whisperings amongst the group about whether we get back into running some campaign days for Midgard, something like this. Because there's so many, this is just a scout hall that we used to hire out, but there's so many great venues nowadays, like Boards and Swords. We've also got 7 City Collectibles near us and so forth, that actually there is discussion about whether we should do this.
Great fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm just going to skip us on to this one. So this is Salute, you said, in 2011.
So again, I've been working as a teacher for the last 20 years. So but I just built up a group that wanted to go round and run games, essentially. So our extended group is called Morrison Chums. We go to shows and run games. So this is Salute. This is our Ethiopia 1935 game. So I have gone into guns occasionally, although there are a lot of swords in this game, to be fair. Yeah, so that's Salute. There's a bigger picture of the table.
Wow.
You might see the old terrain being repurposed. Yeah, there's an Italian bomber kind of centre right there, SM-81, I think, flying over. And it's all, everything on the ground is scratch built, basically. An Ethiopian village under attack by the Italians. And yeah, I was playing, I think, Triumph and Tragedy at this point. We had to go at Warhammer Great War with these rules as well, all kinds of bits and pieces. But this was triggered by me going to teach in Ethiopia for 2 weeks. And then the project, right, that's what I want to do. And Empress Miniatures has just got the best range of figures for these guys, sculpted by Paul Hicks. Oh gosh, yes. There's a
look at that.
Yeah, there's an Italian tank being overturned by potential Ethiopians. This happened. I mean, I've got massive respect for the Italians in World War II. Just going, the tank. These tanks were named Aragoni, which is a type of tinned pilchards. I think they knew they were going to war in a tin can, and there was a battle where 10 of them were taken out by the Ethiopians. So yeah, frightening stuff. Anyway, yeah, but as you can see, there's swords in there, so I don't mind the guns because there's swords and swords are winning.
The number of swords balances out guns, does it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. This is the Battle of Karen. So this is a 1941 game from the East Africa campaign. When you had the British Empire forces fighting the Italians in East Africa. And I like height on tables. I like doing something creative with them. John Grant, actually, many of you know, John Grant's still on the left. He made the basic woodwork for this to my design, and then I did the texturing. But it all folds flat. This actually fits in the boot of one of our team's minis. You can see the price is showing Antrim. The big section centre break down and all fold flat. And it's kind of stepped going up the side of it. There's another picture, actually. There is a handsome crew there, Martin. Yes. We've got better T-shirts nowadays. Oh, my God, there's more of us being a handsome crew. Yeah. Yeah, this is the some of the Morrison Chums game. I'm absolutely blessed to have a core of really, really good gaming friends who will support me with whatever crazy project. They are.
I'm definitely going to post this next one because Alex is obviously in the chat, and you've labelled this one World War One. And
yeah. Oh yeah. There's a goblin just off, shot to the left, Alex. No, World War One as well. I guess I went through a period having OD'd on swords and shields in the WAB era. I went through a period where I got into the guns in the 20th century. It's always been a latent bit of interest for me. I found out I'd got a relative who'd been shot down and killed in the Royal Flying Corps in World War One. And Scribs and I took a trip, and Nick Eyre, actually, we took a trip to Verdun in France. We walked a load of World War One battlefields. And yeah, so World War One. And this is so these figures are Soapy's handiwork. So Andy Dormer, who we saw earlier, playing WAB. These are the Woodbine design ones you can buy from Gripping Beast. Oh gosh, I've got a comment there from Alex saying you only play weird World War One nowadays.
Yep, that's Alex has got a well.
You're making me sad there, Alex, because I have recently actually bought a British force, and I'm getting my Germans up to speed. So I want to play historical. Anyway, skipping on. What's next on this slide?
We got Fort Vaux.
Fort Vaux, yes. Yeah. So, I love going to historical sites. Oh my God, Alex, haven't you? It's looking demanding today. I'll show you a picture. So, this was a trip. I think the French are quite underrepresented in World War One. You talk to wargamers, and often people pull out the same tired tropes. Oh, the Italian tanks, 6 reverse gears. The French cheese-eating surrender monkeys. And I'm British, but I'm fairly international in my outlook, and I'm not up for that personally. I think you look into anybody's military history, and you can find, stories of grit and determination. And this is the Battle of Verdun. Sidney Roundwood got me into this. He did a load of games using Too Fat Larders for the Mud and the Blood a number of years back. And I bought a copy of it at Antwerp in 2014. And Scribs and I were sat on the ferry on the way home going, shall we? Yeah, let's do it. Anyway, a year later, we went out to Verdun in France. And this is Fort Vaux, this tiny fort that was the scene of a horrendous 4-day siege in 1916 with fighting with flamethrowers, machine guns and grenades in these corridors. And and there we are. There's the Fort Vaux game. There's me and Tom donning our best poily moustaches. So I decided I was going to build this as a kind of 3D dungeon floor plan. I think this takes a lot of inspiration from Dave Andrews' original dungeon floor plans he did for Games Workshop. So I don't know if you can see well off the picture, but it's raised up. So I got a map, or I got a plan of Fort Vaux. It's not very big either. And then went to a local copy shop. I say local, a proper big one that does big architect's plans. Said, right, I want you to blow this one up to 1/56 scale for me. And then, oh yeah, no problem, mate. And they came downstairs about 45 minutes later. Said it's going to cost a bit more than we thought. Like, okay, yeah. And anyway, they printed me the entire blueprint, and then I built the whole fort to a 1/56 scale, basically out of foam board and textured cards and other stuff. And then we took it round, a load of shows in 2016, which was the 100th anniversary of the siege, and ran a game, basically a participation game, where you can play the entire siege of Fort Vaux in about 30 minutes.
I mean, that is something else. I really like that. That is awesome. What do you, Steve? That strikes me as something.
Yeah, it's getting all these awesome looking tables. It's definitely it's stirring the creative scenery juices. Let's put it that way. But that looks absolutely stunning. Absolutely
that is very
stunning.
It's all phone balls. Yeah, there's another one. There's a World War One game. At the start of the Battle of Verdun, there was snow at the beginning of the offensive in February 1916. So This is one of the battles from that, basically. But I mean, all the trees are twigs and so forth. It's nothing particularly fancy. As much as I love World War One tables with cut-in scenery and terrain, I just don't have the storage space. Everything I have folds up flat. The Fort Vaux game you saw just now, that all breaks up into sections and fits inside 6, I think 18-litre really useful boxes. So the whole thing goes in the boot of the car. This is a roll-up mat with dropped-on vac-form terrain on it and so forth. The backdrop has a huge amount to it, but it's not actually a very technical piece of scenery. And the snow wasn't permanent. We just bought a couple of those big tubs of woodland scenic snow scatter and poured it all over the table.
I mean, we were talking the other week. I think it was last week where we were talking about scenery. Doesn't make the game. The scenery in the battle doesn't make the game. And in fact, in not next week but the week after, we're going to be chatting more about it. And it just that immersion and different ways of approaching the game. That the way, especially the floor plan. That's a cracking. Just a cracking idea. Just a different way of approaching it is just what I love about wargaming, and what that narrative, especially getting that idea of the narrative would really come over you by using the terrain in that instance. You got another battlefield tour here.
Oh yeah, here we are. This is my 50th birthday tour. Some famous wargaming faces there. Yeah, this is us with the remains of a trench mortar near Arras. So we went to on that trip. We went to find out where I have an ancestor, a great uncle in my family, who was shot down and killed by the Red Baron.
Wow!
I know. I never believed it. When I spoke to my mum, who was obsessed with family history, she said, "Oh, I thought it was just a story." Anyway, so we went to visit. We did a tour of Arras. We found out where Red Baron had taken off from, where he was shot down, where he died and so forth. And and then we did a bit of a tour, and I absolutely love doing this stuff. Want to do a lot more of it in the future. So World War One without goblins is not dead. So
awesome stuff. I just say we've got 187 people who've tuned in. So thank you very much for joining us.
What's next on the
we have now. I know that there's someone in the comments, Paul Richardson, who's going to be all over this. That is awesome. That's Lucid Eye, right?
Yeah, these are the Lucid Eye Red Book of the Elf King figures. I'm a massive fan of Steve Saller's stuff. The prices are relatively high with Lucid Eye, but as we mentioned before the show, there is a sale coming up and they run frequent sales.
Yes.
But I just can't beat these for painting. I don't know if you've ever seen Jim Fitzpatrick's books about Irish myth, kind of 70s. A very famous artist. He did the original Che Guevara picture and didn't get a penny for it. He did album covers for Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. Anyway, but he's a big influence here. And yeah, you've got a John Hodgson background on there, and these figures are just absolutely banging. And I did spend some time.
I've looked at them many times. I just love. I love that take on elves, and getting away from the aloof kind of.
They've got a real edge to them. I will say really quickly for people watching this, if you run out and buy those figures, I have changed all the weapons on them. Just there's minor conditions on there, because all the figures actually come with spears, and like a fool, I replaced all the hands with plastic. Anyway, we don't need to go there. Have you got the treats pictures? What else is
I do. No, I got this one here. Now, this is interesting because about a year ago, we did an episode where we were like, right, we gave the viewers a vote about we're going to design scenarios for a battle, and we're going to do it live. And Crete was the option. So for 2 hours, we sat here and argued how to do it. So we should have just deferred to this. So this looks amazing.
Yeah, this is our Crete Tavernitis bridge table. Now, this is all done with cloths. If you can see the bridge as you go down the road towards the airfield. Where it dips, the rest of the table has been raised up on wooden blocks. So we do this quite a lot nowadays, is raise up one of the tables on blocks, have a foam slope, put a cloth over it, and then you can have a very large hill area without separate hills. Yeah, this is a combination. This is a team effort. Lots of stuff in here. I can see Sam Lancashire's scenery and stuff at this end of it. But yeah, I went to. I decided we're going to do Crete. I went to Crete on a family holiday. Accidentally booked a cottage near the Tavernitis Bridge. And did quite a bit. Yeah, this table has. This is using my LCID cloths. You know, I didn't make anything new from there, but I actually enhanced them. I sprayed on some glue and put some sand from I think it's Hill 107 at the Tavernitis Bridge onto it. This was a brilliant project. It drew a great deal of attention. We ran it at shows we used bolt action a bit. We used chain of command a bit, and we also used I Ain't Been Shot, Mum. This is about as mainstream as I go, I guess. But I think this is an amazing situation, the whole Cretan thing, because you know, people love their elite forces, but here you've got an elite force really getting its ass kicked. And I think that, you know, I think you've got a really interesting balance there with the Germans Germans being just decimated by the paradrops, the glider crashes, and then not expecting the Cretan resistance. I think it's fascinating. It's grim, but it is absolutely fascinating. No, it's a great period for gaming.
That is awesome. What I'm going to do,
I love that.
because I've just looked and seen the time, and I know that people are going to want us to chat about Midgard, which is so. Thank you. So, I mean, to be fair, I can already hear Steve clicking away, buying things for projects he never knew he was going to start until tonight. What we're going to do, guys, we've got 197 people. If we get 4 more, that's the record.
Wow!
So yeah, get your cat and your mum to
get your granny on, all sorts, whatever.
So yeah, we'll give James just a second to have a breather. Thank you because I think this is all going to be relevant when we come to chat about Midgard in a second, seeing all these things. So what we'll just do for a second, and I've just seen the photos, and typically Dom has the most, and I don't. So I'm going to start with Steve. Steve, what have you been up to, mate, over the last week? What have you been doing?
Not a lot. Like I said, I was doing a lot of tidying and stuff. I've actually sorted my a lot of my hobby stuff. I've still got an ungodly amount of stuff under here, but everything else is a nice Amazon boxes essentially. It's all looking neat. But I did get some painting done, and I have been doing some of my where are they?
It's 200.
They're here. Here you go. Look. There you go.
Oh, these are yours.
Yes.
I saw these today. These are beautiful.
Thank you.
They put me in mind of the Battle of Shrewsbury when they had to advance through a pea field. I know they're later.
So these are an idea that a fellow YouTuber, Duncan FX, had a couple of years back of playing Lion Rampant on really reduced base sizes, and just basically halving everything. So that's what I've been doing. So I've been mounting these on 60mm bases, and they're all Perrys, and I have not stuck a single tuft on a single Perry miniature.
Are you sure?
Well, they're all on the base. Look, they're all on the base. The tufts are all on the
base.
So that is a leader and a unit of elite infantry.
Do you want to put your next photo up? Because
that one there is. And the ones at the back is more elite and a base of heavy infantry. But again, all Perrys and all designed as nature intended. Not a single one has been chopped up or had anything stuck to them whatsoever. But yeah, it's been interesting doing that. Although I've had a bit of a change of painting philosophy recently, and it's to do with this tidy up. I'm going to be painting less. Because I just realized I don't need to paint all the time. I've got so much stuff. So what I'm going to be doing is painting less, but spending more time on what I am painting.
I thought you were going to say, but spending more money.
No,
I thought you were going to say that.
Well, probably. Well, when my copy of Midgard arrives, I can imagine there'll be plenty of shekels.
I think there's going to be some wallets going. So I should say as well, I haven't done it. Steve's usually on this more quickly than me because obviously he's such a shill. But the all of the links to all of our YouTube channels are down below, including the link to the Facebook page, where if you answer Dom's questions free, you will gain access. We've got over 1,500 people in there now.
We have,
but also there is a link down below in the video description where you can go and pre-order Midgard on the Two Fat Lardies website. That's all down below. So womble down there after the stream. And then open another tab and then go down there. Dom, what have you been up to? I can see red on your
red stuff. So just before you, I'm just going to say before you move off on the Midgard pre-orders, I know Rich put something up to say make sure if you take advantage of their pre-order deal, do it before Friday because then the price goes up. So if you're going to do the pre-order, do it there. What have I been up to? Well, my continuing ACW addiction, I don't know what you're going to call it, continues apace. Well, the problem was really we decided we'd have a game last Friday, and I totted up the number of Confederate regiments I had, and I was about 3 short, so of course I had to paint them. So there you go. These are these little 3D. I showed them on a video a while back. These are 3D prints that Ken gave me. I have no idea where they came from. But they got nice.
Won't have any idea either.
He won't know. He probably found them down the back of somewhere. I don't know where.
Fell off the back of a lorry.
The back of a lorry. Yeah, he's probably swapped them for a cow or something. They're really interesting sculpts, and they're a little bit diddy. So you have to put them in their own unit. But I quite like the animation of them. They're kind of cool. So did those. I forget which. I think it's it's Hampton's Legion. That was standard. And then I did another load as sort of skirmish troops, so a bit more spaced out, ready to be used. I think they saw service as cavalry in the game we had the other week. And then I don't know, when I was away up in Ludlow, I think because I was surrounded by all the medieval stuff, I just had a hankering to do some more. It's not grey at all. Shut up. It's butter, not a nut or whatever it is. It's throwing me off completely. So I decided I wanted to do some more medieval. So I picked up some of the Claymore miniatures.
Oh yeah.
To do some another group of Scottish. Well, so this was a little project that I gave Martin. I set him a little challenge and said, because in the old days, Steve, I used to go and do internet research and kind of do my own anything I wanted to know about medievals. I'd investigate. Now I just send Martin a note and say, can you tell me who was some of the Scottish lords that came with Margaret down when she tried to retake the throne in the War of the Roses? And apparently it was quite a challenge. So I like to give him a challenge.
I hated it. I got really frustrated about it.
Dom, I watched your video, and you know what I liked about these figures? They seem to be really chunky.
They are, yeah. Claymores are brilliant for that.
There's a nice chunkiness about them.
Yeah, yeah. They work well. They really work well. And that chunky is easy to paint, isn't it? So there you go. That was
very nice.
First Lord Hamilton, was it? I think I forgot now who it is. He told me. Anyway,
it's the one that had the easier livery. That's what
basically he said there were two.
Who's got the?
And I said, well, which one's got the easiest livery? And he said that one. So that's why it became that. So there you go. That's what I've been up to. What about you?
So I got a Epic Punic Wars game tomorrow, in fact, and I've just been painting up a couple of things that Warlord sent, but instead of doing a video on them, I figured the best way to show them off would be to actually put them in a battle. So this will be making its debut tomorrow in the battle. So this is the ballista.
That will miss everything, it will.
Well, good, because Robin's going to be using it. So that was that. And then, of course, to go with them, we have some flaming piggies.
Yes,
you did good.
I did, yes, and there you go. There's a look at his little face in the middle. Look at his little face. I felt really bad after.
That's the happiest burning pig I have ever seen in my life. And not that I've seen many. I just want to put that out there in case people
I might
track me down.
My channel might get doxed by after I do this battle report. We got some rules for them because there's no rules provided in the book. We've got some rules that we're going to try out. They're not going to be, great game changing, but thematic. I've had enough. We've done two battles using points, and now we're not. I did it for two games, and now that hasn't, so we'll go from there. But no, I'm looking forward to it. But that is now paved the way because there's a new game coming out. There's a game coming out that's that people have been aware has been coming out for a while, is probably fair to say, and it's now caused me to completely shuffle about my planned projects. In fact, one of my projects has now been knocked back probably a couple of months, and it also caused me to put an order in with war bases to the collection on Saturday. Dom, I've done what you did last year. I'm going to be collecting a heavy amount.
You're going to be carrying around 100 ton of MDF.
MDF. So that's why James says. So we're going to chat about Midgard. So I'm going to be a coward. And I'm just going to turn this over to James. And I'm simply going to say, James, I think there's a lot of people in the group and there's a lot of people watching who will know, they'll have heard of Midgard and they'll know what it is. But assuming that there isn't, and assuming some people in the group who don't know what's going on, can you give us the pitch? What is Midgard Heroic Battles?
Midgard is a narrative battle game where the heroes are the stars of the show. The tagline, I believe, is historical, legendary, and fantasy battles in an age of heroic deeds. So it's a battle game. It's not a skirmish game. I've seen quite a few posts. I thought it was a skirmish game. It isn't. Okay, it's called Midgard Heroic Battles for a reason. It is a battle game, but you don't necessarily need hundreds of figures to play it. And I think Martin's put the links below, but all this information is out there. And there's a number of videos from Two Fat Lardies introducing it. It's a very open, creative game. Now, I say I've got a little bit of stick on the group the last couple of days for saying that it's not intended as a tournament game. It isn't. That doesn't mean the rules aren't relatively tight. Like I said, I've been playing battle games for decades, basically, and I wanted something that had a feeling of medieval warfare in it, the feeling of legendary warfare that could be the Iliad or Beowulf or Egododin or Arthur or whatever, because very often these games are the rules are written in quite a scientific and mechanical fashion, and whilst we do need mechanisms to move our troops around the table, actually when you're playing these periods, these people were not the same as us. They're the same as us in that they got married, they wanted children, they wanted to eat and so forth, but they thought very differently. There's a very different mindset, and I wanted a game that gives you a little bit more of the heroic leadership mindset where leaders led from the front. Sometimes it's not sensible to. We know this in real life, but we also know that people who didn't lead from the front, like Henry VI, for example, got deposed because leaders at the time were expected to be like that. So that the game explores, I think, heroic warfare in a battle system. I would also say, Master, and I'll just finish off my pitch quickly, is that the game has also been written to work at a fairly introductory level. It is more complex than Lion Rampant. Some of you, I know, will be nodding and pleased to hear, but it is inspired by that simplicity of pick it up and play it. I see a lot of games around. I've played so many games over the years where you have the complexity overtakes the actual game element of it. And I want to be able to play a battle game in about 2 hours in an evening at the club. I don't have a permanent games room. You know, I go to a club, I game in a pub with a load of my mates, or I go to a friend's house or whatever on a 6x4. I want a game that I can play to a conclusion in that time that doesn't do our head in, but also lets us to focus on the tactics and the story rather than looking up that particular rule that nobody can
Yeah.
remember.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely no,
Yeah.
no. All I was going to say is when you were saying there, and speaking to Wars of the Roses, because I have a passing interest in it, is that the antithesis of Henry VI against Edward IV, the two, if you ever want to see how, the idea of a heroic leader, it doesn't matter what he did, the fact that, what he did when he wasn't at war. Edward, the image of Edward as that heroic leader, this 6'4" giant in plate armor fighting his way through Towton, and then Henry, through no fault of his own really, sitting under a tree watching a butterfly while everyone's fine is great. And having gone through the rules and had a look at it, the narrative feeling, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I know you'll come on to talk it, but the way you can really build your leaders and your heroes out, I feel it'd be very easy as a tool set to really tinker with it and create what you like. You've sent me this awesome picture here, which I'll just keep on the screen because I think that does such a good job of sort of I love that. But I mean, I already said behind the artwork, it is stunning. It really is. It is fantastic. The rule book looks amazing, and I can't wait to get the physical copy. I really can't. How did this come? You've given the picture about it, but how did it develop? How did you go right? How did it pick up steam?
I said I played a load of games. I kept adapting them. And one of the interesting things about working on Warhammer Ancient Battles supplements was that when we did the Age of Arthur one, I got Daniel Mersey and Guy Halsall involved, who both have academic qualifications. And indeed, Guy Halsall was professor of medieval history at York for some time. And actually, once you get talking to them, you realise that as much as we tried to make our rules fit WAB, that WAB wasn't really the right vehicle for what we were trying to do. We added heroic, what would they call them? Special abilities or something. I can't remember what we called them in the original book. But ultimately, WAB, it's a descendant of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and it isn't really very much based on real battles, I guess. It was a great fun game. Don't get me wrong, it was an absolute game changer, but I came to a point where I didn't really want to play it anymore. And there were new mechanisms out there, faster mechanisms, ways you could play a game without individual figure removal, rolling 3 sets of dice to resolve every combat, that kind of thing. So I wanted to develop, and I tried so many rule sets, and they were either just a bit mechanical in the way they looked at warfare, or the ones that treated heroes with interest were skirmish rule sets. So I wanted to create something that bridged both of those, where the units are actually painted with quite a broad brush, where the actual mechanisms of moving your troops around the battlefield are realistic but not hugely time-consuming. But then your heroes are existing in a different layer of the game, but they're essential to the success of the game. And we've been joking about, the goblet shortage and whatever that's going on in charity shops in the UK at the moment. But the reputation mechanic was a key thing that came in very early on. So I started with some simplistic mechanics whereby units would throw quantities of dice rather than being individual figure removal. And then reputation came in really, really early. The first game I used them for was a heroic game, a Celtic game. I think actually that might be the first picture I put in the Midgard.
Yes, I have. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah. So here we go. These are alternative armies figures from the 1990s. Again, common bit of interest that Nick Hare and I have. Very highly based on the Slain books on the left. Anyway, I wanted to play a Celtic Battles game, and there wasn't really anything out there for it in terms of battle terms. And I've got big collections of these, as you do, and I thought, well, I'm going to start writing something. And that was kind of where it started. Reputation came in very early on. We'd already been using goblets. Actually, we've been playing to the strongest, because Simon Miller, who does To the Strongest, he plays with victory medals, the tactile winning and losing tokens. I wouldn't claim anything in Midgard is entirely original. And Rick Priestley and I were joking about this the other day. He said, what he put into Warhammer wasn't original. He was riffing on Don Featherstone and whatever. But I think I've taken it and blended it into something new. So the reputation is the mechanism of victory and defeat. It's best thought of as an elastic force morale. Many ancient battles games involve lots of calculations to try and work out when a contingent or a battle is broken. And you sat there at 10 o'clock at night going, oh, that's half a point from there and 2.5 points from there. And it does your head in, or it does at my age anyway. So I wanted a system where you could clearly see who was winning or losing, which is where the reputation comes in. The reputation is the morale of your war leader and his warriors, basically, or her warriors, actually. And the key thing is it goes down when you lose units, but it goes up when you commit heroic deeds. So
yeah, that's something when I was going through one of the things that I actually sort of chuckled, and my wife, because I was reading it in the living, my wife was sort of looking at me and said, "What?" I said, "The fact that the first hero to charge, or the general to charge, it happens only once in the game. Gets to pop that in. I just love that.
There's bonus reputation available for those kind of things. And but these were big things in medieval battles, and I think in early medieval battles as well. Where people, you see it's Agincourt, people wanted the honour of being first to charge. Never mind what was the sensible right thing to do. People wanted that honour, and it really comes to life as a multiplayer game. Another thing I wanted it to be was easily multiplayer. Games like Saga and so forth are extremely clever, but they are not suited to multiplayer games because you've got to make decisions about how to use your Saga dice, for example. And it works really well as a one-on-one game. And you could have a mate throwing the dice, but I wanted, with Midgard, everyone to be able to take a contingent or whatever and to set to, and have people competing about who was going to be the first person to lead that charge. Whether that's a good idea or not is totally up to you. But so many things happen in medieval history where it isn't a good idea, but that's not what these people were about. That saving face by putting the first charge in was actually more important than personal survival. I know
they weren't working out the statistical viability of their attack, were they?
Yeah.
Let's just go and jump on somebody we hate. Yeah.
So reputation is the core thing. So throughout the game, goblets available at some charity shops, actually, probably at enhanced prices. But throughout the game, you have tokens. And you don't need a goblet. You can use tiddlywinks. You can use whatever the hell you like. In the rules, we call it a vessel of reputation. But we're actually doing miniature wargaming. We're playing with miniatures, not with counters or whatever, because we like the look of the miniatures. And having something tactile on the table to show you how you're doing with your reputation is kind of fun. And it has become the soundtrack actually to my club. Oh no, they're playing Midgard because you do the ting 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 as the reputation goblets go in. And one of our play testers actually does an evil thing where he doesn't let the players look in the goblet during the game, and then he shakes it at certain points. They can try and guess how much reputation.
That's cool. You could, I'm sure you could develop that with fingers of drink. You could have, as the reputation goes down, the drink leads the goblet.
Somebody will write that for a Lardy special. The Lardy annual special. I suspect there'll be a turning Midgard into a solo drinking game will be. Yeah. Oh, bless. Paul's Paint Show has just put Harry Hotspur up there. Absolutely. Now, but you can win Midgard without being an uber hero. The heroes are actually quite vulnerable. And you guys have seen the rules. You get this. It is not like old Warhammer, where it was very, very hard to kill the heroes. And heroes, if they're in units that get hit, whether by missile fire or in combat, they can actually be hit by stray shots. And which are where the famous Raven dice are coming in. Again, you don't need Raven dice to play, but risk to heroes is kind of built into the game, if you like. So these guys are out there. Some of them are really, really good. I mean, Edward IV, we play him as a level 4 legendary hero. He's a bit of a beast, but he's vulnerable. And
well, it's a risk reward situation, isn't it? Fortune favors the bold. The idea. No one wants to have the guy sitting at the back, especially Dom.
No, absolutely not.
It encourages you to take those risks. And just going back towards the roses for a minute. So in the rules, you gain reputation for heroes leading charges into combat. And you get 1 point if you're a hero, another point if you're the army commander, and a third one if you're charging the army commander's unit. So that actually gives you the Battle of Bosworth in a nutshell. It's easy to look at the Battle of Bosworth and go, what was Richard doing? He was actually the crowned king of the country. Why didn't he just ride off the battlefield, ride north, muster some more support or whatever, and fight them off? Whereas in Midgard, it actually kind of works. Because you're going to gain a reputation for doing that, which could tip the balance in the game. And the best games, you won't get them all, but the absolute best games are the ones where one or both players' goblets is actually empty during the turn, but they get it back up into positive reputation during the turn by committing crazy heroic deeds, and sometimes can win the game as a result. So, yeah.
I really like the idea of that, of the heroes having a massive influence, with the mighty deeds function, but also the fact that they're not these uber powerful units. They're vulnerable. And knowing my dice roll, I can imagine that every single one of my heroes is going to be whacked in the first game. With ones all over the place.
Absolutely. Well, Steve kind of leads on. I was going to say, could you explain a bit about the mighty deeds and the way that they interact, that interacts with the game? Because I know a lot that's been something that's been brought up on the Facebook group for Midgard, which you should go and check out, by the way, because there's loads of stuff getting posted up on there hourly, minutely. It's but also in the PCP, people are asking about the mighty deeds. Could you just explain a bit about the mechanic and the way it interacts with the game?
Sorry, you asked Steve to do that. Do you want me to do it?
No, you. Yeah. Steve can try.
I'm going to have a go.
Go on, Steve, you tell us.
I'll leave it to James.
Do you want me to go? Yeah, so the mighty deeds. There's influences of all kinds of rules in it. Playing a lot of Too Fat Lardies games, Rich and Nick's designs really focus rightly on the big men. That's one of their core mechanics throughout their rules, and this was an influence for writing Midgard, thinking, okay, well, how would these people influence a medieval battle, for example? So the heroes have mighty deeds. We use little jewelry beads. You can use, again, whatever you like, and they get a number of mighty deeds per turn, and they can spend them doing various things during the turn. They can do command-based things where they hustle on tardy units or try to stop units from breaking or pushing into each other in combat. But once combat gets underway, they can also do other things with them. They can use them in challenges to single combat. They can use them to trigger some of the traits, the special abilities within the rules, which incite their men to great deeds of valor or whatever. They can also use them to do things like re-roll wounds. So if they get wounded by an arrow on a Risk to Heroes roll, they can re-roll that. But when they do that, they have to spend a mighty deed, and they also lose a point out of their reputation. And I was thinking about the scene in the Battle of Hastings where William the Conqueror on the Bio Tapestry is riding up with his helmet, lifting his nasal, where he's going, hey guys, it's all right, I'm still alive. And that's exactly what that is about. So, he's spending a mighty deed, but he's also spending reputation to shrug off that potential wound. And as I saw in a game just last week, you can re-roll that and fail it, and then it's really, really funny. Anyway, that's mighty deeds. They're used throughout the game. They regenerate. You get them back at the start of each turn, but there's quite a lot happens in a turn. And what you'll tend to find is at the start of the game, you'll be sat there going, I'm fine. I've got spare mighty deeds left over. And then 3 turns in, you'll be going, bloody hell, I need another mighty deeds. What am I going to get? Am I going to order those laggards to join up and support my unit? Or do I save it to try and re-roll it if I get hit by one of those arrows? Or do I need to save it in case he challenges me to single combat? Without boiling it down to dull resource management, you never have enough unless the gods are absolutely smiling upon you. And the Midgard has fantastical elements bolted onto it. So we've said, historical, legendary, and fantasy battles, you can play it at a very basic, well, not basic at all, historical level, where you have no unusual stuff go. We play straight Wars of the Roses games like that, which are absolutely fun and enjoyable. You can add on legendary elements. There's legendary weapon. You'll have seen us playing with Excalibur and
Yeah.
Arthur
Yeah.
in some of the playtest videos and whatnot, which can also be a magic sword. It might just be a pattern welded sword that's been handed down over generations. It might be it might be a magical sword if you're moving into, Middle Earth or a fantasy environment or whatever. But actually, again, you think about things like the Oriflamme and stuff in the 100 Years' War and whatever. Was it sacred? I mean, how many relics were carried into battle by the Crusaders?
No matter whether it really was or wasn't, it's whether they thought it
might not
was.
have been a real relic, or did people just have a belief in it? So that belief on the part of the troops is kind of baked into Midgard. And when you go into the fantastical elements, there are spells. There's a sorcery trait with a number of spells in there, and then sorcerers will spend their mighty deeds to cast spells with. So there's different uses depending on what kind of heroes you've got leading your forces.
I think that it's something that I really like, because we talked about this before, and the fact you chose Arthurian with Rich, you as you were just saying, you had the legendary weapon. Is it magic, or is it just a really good sword? I really like the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell, the Arthurian ones, and the way that they weave in, the idea of Merlin in that, rather than having a direct effect at throwing fireballs at people. Is it superstition? Did he just know there was going to be an eclipse, or that there was a mist coming in, or having read that section today, in fact, at break time, and looking at, there's so many ways that you can interweave that into your game, so that people who maybe, and I understand, because there's one below me on the screen here who, the moment you throw anything fantastical at something, he starts to get the shivers. I
was as the only person who truly loves all the weird shit around here, I was going to ask the question: how do you balance a rule system that is set up for, presumably you wrote it with Dark Age kind of period in mind? How do you then allow things like flying creatures to come into it without, in fact, really unbalancing the game?
Well, it's all about we talk about settings. It's the language we use throughout Midgard. So the idea is you play in a particular setting. If you say to your mate, right, I'm going to just make up a random list of 300 points, and you're going to make up a random list and meet up to play, you can do that. But I think you're going to have a very unsatisfactory game, because what's the narrative? What's actually going on within the game? So, for example, and there's advice on this in the Design Your Own section. So I'll talk army lists really quickly. There's 12 sample force lists in the rulebook, which have been paired to play against each other. So literally, you can go into the book. There's a 300 and 400 point list for each one, and you can pull out the Arthurian Britons and the Saxons. You can pull out dwarves and orcs. You can pull out Trojan Wars, Trojans and Greeks. You can pull out frost giants and Vikings, and all those lists are pretty much balanced to play against each other. But there's a bit of list design here. If you're going to design your own settings, then if you've got a world in which flying creatures exist, logically, what would be the counters to those flying creatures? The Nazgul are particularly unpleasant in Return of the King and so forth, because actually there isn't really a counter to them, but they're not actually very common. There's only 9 of the winged beasts. But in your average fantasy setting, if one person's got a wizard that can do all kinds of things, there's every chance the other side is going to have access to wizards as well. Maybe with spells like a dispel spell that can pull their teeth a bit. Yeah. If you've got people who've got, if you've got flying creatures, there's every chance you're going to have a lot of archers on the other side, or maybe hero archers with legendary missiles that can take them down, or quite possibly the other side will have some flying technology as well. So I think it's really, really important to state that you've got to work in period for that and with the settings. So what I think we're going to see, I mean, I know we'll question coming up, but I think what we're going to see, and I'm producing some of these at the moment, is a number of, I suggest you think about settings and paired lists to make those work. There are some limits as well within the rule book. So there's limits on things like legendary weapon and flying creatures and whatever, because ultimately Midgard Heroic Battles is an infantry battle game. I've seen a lot of questions recently on the group about, well, how does it work for Hun warfare armies and whatever, nomad armies? Well, how heroic is that? Have you got, can you see a balance within that? Because it's not just about, hey, I just fancy having a force all of flying creatures to play against whatever. It is about saying, what's your world? What's your setting? On the latest videos, Rich and I have done, I took Powell Anderson's The Broken Sword, a classic fantasy novel, as a bit of inspiration. And we created stuff that would both fit that were within that world. So, and I think this is tricky to say sometimes, because going back to Warhammer since the 90s and so forth, there is a kind of default setting in Warhammer. I know they've changed the narrative a bit recently, but in that it's about pick up competitive games and tournament games where you pick some points, you pay those odds. Midgard is so broad, you're not going to get a satisfying game doing that. And also, when you think about things like Warhammer and 40k, they're all set in one universe in one time period where everything else can fight each other. And you still get, serious arguments, in the community about what's balanced and what's fair and so forth. So I think Midgard takes that back to a level saying, right, what are we playing? Are we playing Lord of the Rings? Are we playing The Broken Sword? Are we playing the Warlord Chronicles? Are we playing 100 Years Old? What's our starting point here? And let's create setting and lists that work within that setting, rather than trying to get one up on somebody else and create a super unit or superhero that nobody else has thought of.
I mean, one of the things that I was struck by, and I didn't actually appreciate until I saw the videos, was the structure of the turn sequence. Now, I think a lot of people who are watching, if they haven't seen anything about Midgard, will be quite used to, especially people who are used to games like, say, Black Powder, Hail Caesar, or 40k, where it'll be move, shoot, combat, or you activate a unit and it's a charge, combat, or move, shoot, move on to the next unit. But yours is quite different, and it's very, very refreshing. Could you just talk us through the turn sequence and how it?
Yes, the turn sequence is what I'm calling a modified I go you go sequence. Yeah. I go you go's got quite a bad name over the last few years, and I honestly think that's largely down to Warhammer 40k in particular. A number of editions ago, I'm not going to try and pretend I can remember how many, where if you do I go you go, where you all move, shoot and fight, then if one side with a massive load of shooting weapons on a very small table gets the first turn, they may annihilate the other side. But I do think I go you go has got something going for it, in that when you're playing a big sweeping battle, actually activating individual units, doing a drawback thing like Red Book of the Elf King or Bolt Action, is going to give you a really confused game. And when you think about all the classic movies and action movies and stuff, you tend to get, the trumpets blow and all the Trojan spearmen or Roman soldiers march forward or whatever. So you do get sequences where one side does something and looks mighty. What you don't want is a game where one side does something and looks mighty and just crushes the other side without them being able to do anything about it. So that's what Midgard works against. Midgard, in every game, you have an attacker and defender, which is a tactical position. So in an enemy country in a terrain, you can be a defender in a scenario if you get ambushed, for example. The turn sequence kicks off with a mighty deeds sequence where people get given mighty deeds up to their levels, and then the attacker then gets to move. They can shoot with some units, just light units, because this is your skirmishers rushing up and loosing an arrow in their face before they scarper off again. And then there's a round of combat, if anyone's in combat, and then the defender goes through the same sequence. And then the turn finishes off with phase 6 as a shooting phase, where units that haven't shot yet take alternate shots at each other. So it's not, my arrow storm wipes yours out before you can roll any dice. And then in phase 7 is...
I think he might have just knocked his
he's kicked his microphone
which happened earlier. So hang on, there we go. I'll add him back. There we go. You're back.
Yes,
You're back.
Yeah, I've got a very temperamental something going on here. Sorry, I was just saying, in phase 7, at the end of the turn, you have your reputation phase, whereby you check the goblets of reputation, but also then reputation is added on at that point for particular objectives in scenarios. So if you're holding a hill or a ford against the enemy or whatever, then you can gain reputation. So kind of what is traditionally victory points in games is also baked into the reputation system. Yeah. And then you start to I will also say that the traits and spells can be triggered at different points throughout the game turn. So it's not like there's a magic phase like there used to be in Warhammer Fantasy. All the spells and traits have got a particular space where they can be used. So there's quite a lot of depth to it, and it's had a hell of a lot of play testing. I'm not going to say that it's perfect, but we have tried very, very hard to get a very smooth system out there with plenty of diagrams and explanation and advice, so that you can sit down and play it.
I mean, I can see, because when I read a rule book as well, part of me does think, and because obviously, I play these games and film quite a few of them, and I think about, how easy is it going to be to film? How will people? Everyone's moved around. Hang on, there we go.
That's all right.
Oh wait, no. There we go. Oh, there we go.
Nope.
And the sequence was just something that really, I really like. I just think it's going to be good. Dom, I think you as well. Like last week when we were chatting, you said that that's something you picked up on in the videos.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just it's familiar but not, and I kind of like you build in that sort of reputation element and the fact there's a need to do certain things in a certain sequence to go and grab that objective or make sure you got your troops. I kind of, it's quite clever without being overly complicated. So I kind of enjoyed that from the watching games.
Simplicity was really, really important. It's not a simplistic game, but the basic rules, while some of them are different to what you may have encountered before, are very easy to pick up. Things like the movement, initially that was a lot more complex. I had some templates involved and some other bits and pieces, and over years and years of play testing, it got boiled down. We've had 50 people on and off in the Midgard playtesting group on Facebook, and probably another 40 or 50 people playing that in the UK, Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand. So we've got it into quite a few gaming communities to have a look at it and see if you can make sense of it. So what we've got has been very boiled down. So nothing that's in there is just there on a whim. It's been a very long process.
It seems to have definitely it sort of hit a point with gamers, because and not just because you're here. I sort of said this before the show, but I haven't personally. I don't think I've seen the community this kind of coalesce and excited about a release for quite a while. The last time I could only think of one, and I'm going to lose half the chat when I say this, was when the second edition of Saga came out, and they essentially rinsed all the books they'd done before, released that core book, and then released their Age of Vikings, Age of Crusades, and they changed the sort of the format and the way that they were doing it. Rules were still essentially the same. That's the last time I remember one, but there was this many people. But I've seen so many people talking about Midgard. They've got different ideas. For like samurai.
But that's the point Trojans, about it, isn't it? There's the sheer variety. It's that fact you can go, I want to do a Trojan army, or I want to do a fantasy army, or I want to do War of the Roses, or 100 Years War. You can see it very easily within the rules.
And part of that has been organic, to be honest with you, in that I wrote the set of rules for Celtic legendary battles to start with. And then we got onto our next project with the gaming group, and I said, why don't we use Midgard for this? And then we did Wars of the Roses a couple of years ago, and obviously, never mind, the Bill Hooks has been very much in the ascendancy. We were planning a really big game, and one of our guys said, I think this will be easier with Midgard. So whilst I don't like the idea of one rule set fits all, whilst I really do like a really well-written period-specific game that really captures the period flavour, actually, so many of the things in Midgard are common themes that you see across different periods of ancient and medieval history and legend, that actually it was silly not to kind of expand it to that. And Tolkien's battles and whatever in Lord of the Rings. He's obsessed with the Anglo-Saxons and so forth. His head is in the Middle Ages. So yeah, it works. And you often in the past you've seen people producing rule sets. People say, "Oh well, I play Lord of the Rings with DBM or Hail Caesar," but actually, I thought, wouldn't it actually be a good thing to put a rule set out there that really covers a lot of bases? Yeah. So it's actually that means you don't need the hassle of learning a new set of rules. Buying rules, unless you're on the Osprey £11 blue book series, buying rules is expensive. They're no longer black and white photocopied booklets, with no pictures and whatever. So I think let's put something out there that means that it can be, it's got quite a lot of longevity, that people can do an awful lot with it.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I was going to say, because if there's people watching who don't know, and they may be thinking in the back of their head, "Oh, I've got those fantasy figures, but how to do it?" Would you mind just explaining? Because this is something which I've seen you had to explain quite a lot on the group, and your admins have had to explain. So hopefully, it's kind of resonated out there. People are always talking about having to rebase models, and what's the requirement for Midgard, because of course it then ties into your unit of measurement, which is the spear throw.
Indeed.
Could you? Yeah. How is it? Is someone going to have to go and rebase their entire collection? Is what's going to happen?
The straight answer is no. And as someone who's been gaming for decades, the idea of rebasing stuff, I hate. I know this comes from. Excuse me. I know this kind of comes from WRG rules in the 70s and whatever, the precise base. You have to put each figure on that precision element. And it's gone through with Warhammer, hasn't it? I mean, It's hard to believe when Citadel Miniatures first appeared, they didn't have slotter bases. They just came, and you stuck them on a square of cardboard. And then when Warhammer came out, it gave you suggested base sizes. And as it became more and more a kind of competitive matchup game, had to have those. Right, so Midgard, this is not original, but Midgard uses something called a spear throw. This has been used before as a base width in other games. In other words, all the units need roughly the same width across the frontage of the base. You do not need to have exactly the same frontage across the base, because ideally you'll be playing with mates, you'll be playing in setting, that won't really matter. But the frontage across your base, which is 12 centimeters in the basic game that you can see in that picture there, that also becomes your unit of measurement for the game, which is called a spear throw. And it's also the distance that you can throw a spear in the game, strangely enough. So the game is very scalable. So you can play it on a kitchen table. Someone's worked out if you play with 6 centimeter wide bases, you can play all these scenarios in the book on a 2 foot by 3 foot table. If you play, if you play with an 8 centimeter base frontage, as I've done in 6mm and 15mm, you can play on a 3 by 4. And then with this 12 centimeter base frontage, recommended playing size is 6 by 4. So the whole thing is entirely scalable, and it doesn't matter how many figures you have on those unit bases. Some of the guys on the group I've seen have been putting up round base stuff like the Lion Rampant Knights we saw a moment ago. You'd be absolutely fine with 2 60mm bases, to be honest with you. You just need to imagine they're on a loose rectangle like those figures there, essentially.
I think that's the question I've seen an awful lot on people on the Facebook page and what have you. It's exactly that. So how many figures should I have in the unit? It's like, well,
I mean, as you know, a lot of this information has been out there for a long time. On my website, on the Midgard page on mogsymate.net, that page has got answers to all the frequently asked questions on it. But I think Rich and I were reflecting the other day on advertising. If we were advertising this 30 years ago, you'd put a colour full-page advert in a number of the main magazines for a few months. You'd send out review copies, but actually there weren't many channels for advertising. Nowadays, obviously, the internet is there, but the internet is actually very fragmented. I see comments from people going, "Don't make your official page a Facebook page." And like, it isn't. We've got a Midgard Battles Facebook group for people on Facebook who want to do that. But actually, all the core information is on my website. If you have if you have an internet connection, you can access it all from the Midgard page on mogsiemakes.net. So all that information is there. And what a lot of the admins and playtesters do in the group is just signposting people back there. But Facebook by its nature is a confusing place. You think you've bookmarked a post, then you can't see it. You think you've pinned a post and you can't see it. And some people are using X. Some people don't use Facebook. Some people are using old-fashioned forums. Lots of people are now on Blue Sky. Some people are using Threads. Some people are just using things like TikTok and Twitch and whatever. So it's a very people are all over the place nowadays, and it's how do you get those messages through? For a big company like Games Workshop, it's fairly easy because obviously they've got their own YouTube TV channel, they've got their house magazine, they've got shops all over the world, and so forth. But if you're a small indie producer, it's harder. So, a lot of the time we're just being really patient and just answering the same question over and over. But that's absolutely cool because do you know what? People are interested. People are interested and people are positive.
It'd be worse if people weren't asking the questions because it means they're not interested. So,
completely.
Absolutely. I've just dropped a link to the mogsiemakes.net into the comments. So if people go and click on that, you'll see exactly what James is saying. I just want to ask again because I think we're just gonna say bug of the news. There was some stuff happened.
Yeah, I think so.
Some stuff happened. Some figures came out.
Well, the only thing, just check out the Perry's loveliness. That's all.
Figures came out. My thing wasn't even vaguely related to wargaming. I really struggled. But yeah. Anyway, so
mine is Footsore Miniatures. Footsore Miniatures have got a 10% off deal. And we've been playing our Furians this week, and I'm getting messages from my mates going, "Footsore." And, oh no! But yes.
All the Black Friday sales are starting to start now, aren't they? Well, it's not Black Friday anymore. It's Black November or something, isn't it? They all seem to be doing that.
Friends of General Haig have just popped in the chat. Bloody Minis preview. Bloody Minis.
Yeah, true.
Richard Lloyd. Absolutely setting the heather alight with fantastic figures. Fortunately, for a period that I'm only slightly tempted by, but they've got new stuff. And something about a Black Scorpion figure. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we might as well show it quickly.
So, got it. Yeah, got it. I know Dom had that. So Black Scorpion do make some lovely figures. And I mean,
that's their bounty hunter figure. Look at that. I mean, it's amazing.
Do you know what?
This one
I had that.
I don't know.
I was going to say
number 2 is okay for Midgard. Number 1 is not okay for Midgard.
but I would that one there. I would be sorely tempted to paint up like a ghost, like ethereal green. Like I really would for Dead Man's Hand. Like the ghost he's come back to town. I really would. I know that Dom is sitting there at the minute hating everything that I just said.
He could Midgard.
All right.
Right. Shall we do some questions? Because I can see them piling up. I'll be delighted.
Also, just quickly to say the Wargames Foundry Christmas sales just started as well. So if you're looking for Foundry stuff, start that. Yeah, you have to spend a lot of money to get quite a lot off.
Yeah, it is one of those spend a few quid, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But then if you've got a load of mates who want to buy in with you, it's a good way to do it.
Yep, true.
Right. Let me. So I'm going to because we've started a lot of questions here. So now I know this is something which we talked about beforehand. So I'll put it over to you. So this is from Jonas, and he has just asked: does Midgard cover any early black powder weapons?
Okay, the first thing I need to say to Jonas is that black powder is unheroic. Black powder, the man on the horse. So it's not intentionally included within the rules. Some would say
the same about crossbows, mate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, crossbows are not the Hollywood killing machines that you find on the rule set. Okay, so black powder weapons are not specifically covered. However, being a toolbox set, there is a monstrosity unit type called artillery. You can, and it doesn't say what it's actually shooting, because classic Warhammer figures, there was the lead belcher and whatever. So you can have that as an artillery piece if you want to, but they're not massively powerful. You need to think about these things more like the the organ guns and the side, Wars of the Roses battles and so forth. Things at the side of the battle rather than the main feature. If you've got an army with 10 field guns in it, go and play something else. However, yeah, black powder, you can do it. There's a trait called Hell's Breath, which is quite good fun, which means that units hit by missile fire are more likely to retreat, which can cause them all kinds of problems in the game. We use that for those. I'm actually working on the Wars of the Roses list at the moment, because what I'm going to do over the next few weeks, as time allows, is I'm going to post up some of my paired lists that we've used in playtesting that haven't made it into the book. So that has some suggestions in there. I know also someone's been asking about samurai. I think the answer is yes, essentially. You can create things with missiles. You can choose what the missiles are. There are some effects that could represent black powder weapons, but you need to not expect them to be the game winners. The game winners will be your infantry and your heroes leading charges with them. Okay.
Brilliant. No, I think that does it. Yeah, that was
right. And we've now got Red Death, the samurai. Yeah. I would love to see someone create a samurai supplement for Midgard. I think they're absolutely brilliant. I've been watching Shogun recently, as have many of us, but my knowledge is not at that level. But I think once we get this release out of the way, we're then going to start looking at supplements. I've got some plans which we'll talk about in a moment, but certainly it'd be brilliant to see. But again, that's about getting samurai armorers that can fight each other, rather than going, oh, I'm going to play my samurai against your Trojan Wars, Hector's chariots or whatever. It's not about time tunnel competitive gaming. It is about, let's create a setting and make this work. And I do think in the future there will be some additional traits added into Midgard. Whilst I've made it as toolbox easy as I can do, I think that will happen. And one thing, we've got a brilliant guy in the playtest group called Ralph, who has created an Excel spreadsheet, which all the formulae for calculating your own forces, they're all in the book. It's all there. There's nothing hidden. You won't be sat there going, how's he worked out these points cost? Because it's all there for you. But Ralph's created a brilliant spreadsheet, and long term I'd like to get an app as well, but that's one for the future. But in Ralph's spreadsheet, what he's put in extra drop down menus if you want to create your own special traits and so forth. So if you've got a particular way you want gunpowder to work in your game or whatever, you can add a trait on and add them in using that. So absolutely fine.
Fantastic. Satchel has said, you talked about multiplayer gaming, but is it suitable for solo play? Which seems to be
yes, it is. Now, I'll say as a caveat, I have not played it solo, apart from when I've been play testing specific combat and shooting situations. But about 4 or 5 of the playtest group have played it solo and found it absolutely fine. So it doesn't have hidden elements in it. During lockdown, I tried to teach myself and my friends muskets and tomahawks over Zoom, which was a bloody foolish thing to do. It's a brilliant game, but you have a hand of cards which have to remain hidden from your opponent.
Yeah, you can't.
So that was a damn foolish thing to do. Midgard does not have those kind of hidden elements. So it's very easy. None of our playtesters have actually used an AI system machine, a Mr. Babbage machine or whatever, to make that work. They have just said, okay, this commander's like this commander's like that. I suspect one of them, and indeed Mike Peters wrote a guide for playing solo when he was testing with us. He said he's willing to put that up on the group once the rules are published. So I think we'll definitely give that a look over. So very suitable for playing solo. There's no additional actual direct mechanisms for it within the game, but because it doesn't have hidden mechanisms, I think it's quite simple to do.
It looks very straightforward to play it solo by the look of it.
Daniel over the sea is asking, now you slightly answered this already, but he's basically saying for fantasy themed games, are there rules or ways that make those various races distinct? But obviously you would bring that out in traits and
totally. I would also, when you get the book, and I know it's hard because obviously the books are pretty much all in the post at the moment, or on their way to your friendly gaming store. But with the books, there are 12 paired army lists in there with a fair spread of stuff. So you can look in there for ideas immediately. There's also a bit of advice, but I think your core thing is when you're creating different races, cultural groups, whatever, you want to think about what's that group actually like, and then pick traits accordingly. One thing I would say at this point, and it's a little bit early to say it, but one thing we found with the playtesting is, I said earlier, the units are deliberately painted with a broad brush to make them, they're not really complex. If you've played Warhammer Fantasy Battles stuff in the past, you'll know you'll have about 7 or 8 units aside, and they're all slightly different. Midgard doesn't work well like that. You're showing the Battle of 5 Armies game up there. Every single orc unit in the game, I think we had 48-man units of orcs in the game. All those units had exactly the same stats. Yeah, you might say, oh, well, these Gundabad orcs are slightly different to these orcs, or it slows it down. So paint your troops with a broad brush. And again, once you go into the sample lists in the book, you'll see this very, very clearly. There aren't loads and loads of different troop types in each army list. The variation comes from maybe giving a few of those different traits, but then it's the characterization through the heroes and the balance of the things in the army.
Because this is the we said it in the photo description here for us, but in the book, this is the 300-point Saxon list, isn't it? Here,
that's it done with Wiglaf miniatures. So Dan Mears is 15-18 mil miniatures. So yeah, this is Wiglaf miniatures. These are based on 8-centimeter frontage bases. So I think there's 8 infantry units here, 2 skirmisher units, and 4 heroes. And yeah, that plays on a 3x4 table. So when you look into this, go to look at this army. I'm talking about. Daniel was talking about different fantasy races. So in this army, there's 2 units of youths, Yugooth. Now, we don't know whether they fought separately or together, but they have the trait impetuous. That means they have to charge when they've got an enemy in their killing zone, so directly in front of the units. And they can't choose not to pursue. They have to pursue the enemy. Okay. They also have slightly lower armor than the other units in the army to represent the fact that this is actually really a bunch of teenagers out to make a name for themselves. If you think about kind of Red Branch in the Cahulan Tales and stuff of Northern Ireland, you're in the right area. So that's a very simple way. And that trait, impetuous, is great, for example, for using with orcs or goblins or any other race or culture group in your particular fantasy setting that believes that charging in is the best thing to do. So there's loads of ways to type these with the toolkit that's in the room.
No, that is awesome. I've just seen. Sorry, I'm just. God, there's so many comments. Hang on a second. Alid has just said, "Pissing myself laughing. I've just bought a cup of coffee and been told to buy it if I haven't already." Good man. Steve has just asked me if they can expect a Warlord Chronicles project. I've already got a load of Arthurian stuff because I played Dux Britanniarum. So I have a lot of stuff already, which is what's going to be going into the Sabbath bases I'll be picking up at Warfare on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll just chip in there quickly. We've got a campaign system which is pretty much about 80% there at the moment. But Tom and I from our group started playing an Arthurian Warlord Chronicles based campaign last weekend, which we put a video up on the group. I think you're going to be seeing a fair bit of Arthurian stuff. It's perfect territory for Midgard and what it's about.
I
it
think
also
everyone
nicely straddles that historical and fantasy bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
you can go all in with Merlin and magic spells if you want to, or you can keep it very conservative but interesting with traits.
Absolutely. No, I think it's almost like it's kind of a quasi historical period that the fantasy gamers, historical gamers can meet in the middle and actually find some common ground.
That's interesting, actually. I really like what I do to be inclusive. I'm really just not interested in people telling other people they're playing toy soldiers the wrong way. It really we're a niche hobby. It's a growing niche hobby, but let's get out there, because you don't need to play with all these people. You certainly sit there slagging them off on the internet. Napoleonics is not my thing. You won't find me on groups, having to go at people for that. I'd rather play for fun. Yeah,
I've got a question here from James. So he said, so James, because you came to CrackCon, and obviously you came over and you have it. So James, after I gave him all of the gunfighter written, he put together that little booklet. So
right, okay.
So
James wearing a toga.
James was wearing a toga. Yes, he was fully togaed. So he just said, how does Midgard handle being generic but also retaining enough setting flavour? An unfair criticism often levelled at games like Hail Caesar or Black Powder. So I guess,
I have to say that was one of my questions before I saw the rules or saw some of the gameplay, because I thought I'm always slightly nervous of those sort of things that cover everything. And particularly when you're heading into fantasy, but it does do it.
The key thing I need to say there is play in setting. Choose what your setting is going to be. Play within the setting, because one of the things that makes Midgard work is there's a basic warriors heavy infantry profile that you'll have seen in the army builder. Actually, we use that basic profile. We use it for most Saxon spearmen. We use it for billmen in the Wars of the Roses. Okay, we use it for warriors of Rohan on foot. We use it for Trojan spearmen in the Trojan Wars. It doesn't matter that we're using the same profile for those, because they're not going to fight each other. You don't need a difference if they're not within the same setting. If you put them in the same setting, then you are looking at, they're going, okay, well, Achilles' myrmidons, we often play with them being armor 4, the top armor level for most infantry. Their armor's not better than 15th century knights, obviously, but are they the best armored warriors and best motivated warriors of their age? Yes, they are. So therefore, we're going to give it to them. So it's all about relationships within the settings.
I think that kind of leads on to Trajanic's question, which is, and this is on the same lines, and essentially you've pretty much answered it there, which is how would you balance, say, Norse versus ice trolls and snow wolves? But I think you've essentially just answered there, which is picking your setting and picking your traits and your heroes. It's there, and the tools are there for you to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think to cover that, so again, there's Norse versus Frost Giants in the book, lists 11 and 12. They're already there. Those lists, for example, the trolls, the giants are really mean. The smaller giants are not so bad, but the really big ones, those Reaper figures that we've got, they are pretty beastly, but they are balanced because the Vikings have got options to take. Berserkers, they've got gods on their side. So the Frost Giants get Loki, the Azir get Thor and Freya, and you can put more on the table if you want to. So you've got that balance there. You've got a way to defeat that. The Norse also get quite a few archers, which are great for shooting giants with. If that Norse force was just a bunch of very plain historical Vikings with average heroes, then it wouldn't be balanced.
No. I've got to put this up because it is very rare that he's not been sarcastic. Robin has posted up saying, you haven't used the word streamline to describe them as far as I've known. Thank you. I know Robin has a thing about when people say streamline. So I
will add to that. All the years of play testing, Rich Clark from Two Fat Larders has been absolutely amazing to work with. We've taken it apart over the last couple of years, put it back together, ask the questions. Do we need this? Do we need this? Is there a better way to explain this? Do we need a diagram for this? So Rich compares it to like Cadbury's filtering chocolate or whatever, filtering it or blending it 10 times. It's had a huge amount of work. And I look back, and kind of 2 years ago, I thought I was ready to go into print. But I look back at that version and think we have got something so much better now. Like I say, I'm not claiming it's perfect. You need to get a copy, play a copy with a mate, whatever. Have a look at it, see if it works for you. Not everyone's going to like it, but
you've hinted at it quite a bit, James. But how long has this been in production? How long have you had this sort of pot boiling?
I started writing it in about spring 2019.
Holy smoke, that is a good while ago.
And yeah, I mean, I'm not a full-time author at anything.
No.
I hold down a day job, but I'm balancing stuff to take a bit more time to work on Midgard and writing projects over the next year. Yeah, and it's just been ongoing. My family were so excited when the proof got dropped off by Rich the other week to go, oh my God, it's actually happening, because they're ready. In production, I guess, I felt the final rules were pretty much finished about 2.5 years ago. Then we went through an extra round of play testing, extra round of rewriting, a bit more play testing, and nothing has really changed in the rules since December last year. That's when we locked it down and got it into a format where we could hand it over to John Hodgson from Handiwork Games, who has done such a blinding job on the layout. I mean, just get a copy for the pictures. John's getting some for his web store at Handiwork Games, because I think, there's a lot of people out there who are big fans of John's artwork, and rightly so. He's got a massive pedigree, and yeah, it cuts out the pictures and put them in a frame, because there's some lovely stuff in there. But it definitely isn't about surface over content. It's had a huge amount. Yeah, about 5.5 years ago is about when the rules started.
Wow.
And we're locked down just under a year ago. So yeah,
that's mad.
Wow. I've had a couple of questions in here. Basically, Louis' one is essentially what's the price? If you go over to Two Fat Lardies, so currently until Friday, the book is £30. If you go over and pre-order, and then because you're getting it at a pre-order price, there is a bundle that comes with it with lots of very nice templates and tokens that are made by Warbases, and that's currently £40. So if you head over there, you will see all of those over there.
Yeah, exactly. So the book is basically going to be retail price is £30. The PDF, which will be available from Two Fat Lardies by itself on Monday, is £20. And then the tokens, I think, are 10 at the moment if you buy them in the bundle, or 12 later on, I believe. Essentially, if you're one of those gamers who likes to have the book and the PDF, and a lot of people who do that, they put the PDF on a tablet because it's easily searchable and whatever. They like to have both of them down the club. I have an electronic format. Then that's the best deal that's going to be on that going forwards. And then from the end of next week, it's going out to retailers and will go to stores. Across the world.
It must be so cool. Man, such a cool feeling to see to get it out.
It's been a very long slog. You see me very cheerful this evening. There have been moments when you just think, "What have I done?"
What are you going to do with your life after all this time? It's been such a focus.
Write the supplements.
Right.
The straight answer. I said the campaign system is about 80 done. And whilst I'm not going to write all the supplements, I'd like to get the first few out there for my particular eras of speciality, I guess. I'd also like to get a template out there, because one of the things that hampered Warhammer Historical, if you remember the WAB days, was that whilst lots of supplements were produced, there was never really a format set down for the supplements. And that meant that some of the supplements in the same era didn't play particularly well against each other. And again, we're talking about playing in setting here, but I'd like to retain kind of editorial control over that. And if other people are writing the supplements, I mean, Rich will set up an editing process, but I'll be involved at the stage of saying, right, how balanced is this? Are we okay with that? Because we want everyone to have fun playing the game. That's very much what it's about. I'm really excited to get the campaign system out, because that's got another 10 scenarios in it. So there's 5 scenarios in the basic book, all quite varied, and then there's another 10 currently sitting there. And the scenarios, actually, I've not mentioned it, but they're really key, because there's a master figure walking past.
There's a master monster in the background there.
Yeah, the scenarios are really actually important, because so many battle games work on the premise that there are no scenarios. You rock up with your balanced list, you dice for terrain, and there isn't actually an overall scenario and narrative that you're playing going through. And I think they're just essential. So it's definitely a play scenarios kind of game. Okay,
no,
time for a couple more.
That's awesome. Yeah, we got a couple more, and then there's just a couple of here. So Benjamin, I knew. Do you know what? I knew he was going to ask this. He said, "Is there any rules for example, for shield walls pushing against each other? If you got, is there a mechanic in there?"
Benjamin, have you already asked this one on the YouTube? Because I've answered this one several times on YouTube comment, but the answer is yes, basically. Now, there's a bit of a shocker, and you guys who've got the PDF may have seen it. There isn't a shield wall rule, which heresy in some quarters. Possibly.
I was ready to burn mine on that basis, but it's a PDF, so I better not.
That's fine. You can make your own if you want to. Okay, but without getting too historical on you, is Shield Wall has become a staple. Oh, get into Shield Wall. And you can see it there in the Last Kingdom TV series. Oh, pile all your shields up, get into Shield Wall. But I think terms like Shield Wall and Fulcrum and so forth were actually all used for a dense body of troops deployed in the best possible way they could be, which in the early medieval period was almost with locked shields, so you could push forward at each other and stab over the top with people behind to give you the ranks. So the combat system is basically built around shield wall combat. You have separate units, but they support each other. And again, you guys haven't seen the PDF of known this, but if you've watched any of the battle reports, supporting your unit is absolutely essential to winning the game. There are real life tactics in there. It's done in a slightly abstracted gamey way because it has to be, but generally a well-supported double line of troops will beat individual units fighting them piecemeal, no matter how no matter how strong those individual units are. Within the shield wall, so when you are pushed back in combat, if you are pushed back into friends and you need your friends behind you, there may be people being crushed, you can lose stamina points and so forth. I'm a big subscriber to the point of view that more people in medieval battles died in routing and retreating than actually died in the hand-to-hand fighting. So that's very much reflected within the rules. So your answer is yes, but there isn't a specific shield wall rule.
Having watched the battle reports, I think that support mechanic is absolutely brilliant. I just like the way that there was so much thought going into the positioning of units. You know, are they going to support them? Are they going to get involved in the fighting? And I thought it just threw up so many sort of tactical nuances in how you deploy and how you move forward. I just thought it was such a simple way of doing it, but I think it works so well.
Thank you. Playing Rick Priestley the other day. Sorry, Rick really liked that mechanic. Did not seen it elsewhere. And that was just, I think it's novel. I mean, it's a saving throw. That thing's not novel at all. But it was a case of me saying, okay, what are the supporting troops actually doing here? And, Battle of Hastings are one of the template battles in my mind. How can you make it really hard to crack a line of Saxons on a hill? And because being uphill of your opponents in the rules gives you more support dice, gives you an additional support bonus, then there's a whole load of reasons why you did that.
Absolutely. I've got one last question for you, B, and then we'll just wrap on to what you've got coming up, and before we end. But also, this is probably one of the best screen names I've seen in quite a while. Dice to see you dice. Just wants to know if you still play Warhammer Ancient Battles and your 2 supplements.
The sad answer, I'm afraid, is no. I've been playing Midgard solidly for 5 years. No, I do dig into the supplements, and actually I had some of the WAB supplements off the shelf the other day because they're just such inspirational books. And I don't mean mine, I mean other people's. But no, I'm afraid is the straight answer. I got to a point where I wanted something with more modern mechanisms in there. That sounds really old, doesn't it? But I wanted something where that, when you play a game where you've got individual figure removal and you've taken 10 figures off that unit, 6 of them, and you end up with figures all over the table, especially if you're playing with 12 or 20 units like we do a lot of the time with Midgard. And I wanted something that was more streamlined for playing the battles. So straight answer, I'm afraid, is no. I still have them and treasure them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. Well, what I'd like to use, because I've got to put this picture up because obviously this is my jam. I've got to put this up. That would be a John Neville, I believe, on the.
Very good.
John Neville and Edward, and I assume Barnett looking at the at the fog. So what is next year? I mean, obviously we would say the game is out in a couple of weeks, and you've already said you're working on the other supplements. Obviously, out of the 6 photos you sent me, what's coming next? This one immediately jumped out at me. I kind of
why.
That's because we've played loads of Wars of the Roses games. We're actually meeting up to play the Battle of Wakefield in December. And lots of people have asked, how does it work for late medievals? And I think that's it. I'm just literally knocking out some sample lists. I'm just taking what we've used in the past for our show games and just turning that into a slightly more coherent document. So I want to put this out in the next week or so, basically. Lord Almighty, Two Fat Lardis says Gary Neville ? Dear, oh dear. I've got to do an oddcast.
There's always one.
I would love to do a Wars of the Roses supplement for it. A campaign for it, certainly. I think something like the Lardy pint-sized campaigns is very likely. So here are 2 matched forces and a list you can play with and expand further if you want to, plus scenarios. But I'm going to do some Wars of the Roses lists within the next couple of weeks because I need those up to date for our group game in December. So that's why that's on. How are you going to
balance? Because you mentioned supplements, you mentioned the Lardy pint-sized type things. You've talked about free available stuff on the Facebook and on your blog and whatnot. How are you deciding what's going to be a supplement and what's going to be, a freebie giveaway kind of fan favorite, kind of fan constructed thing?
Rich, I haven't had a discussion yet. I have an idea. My feeling is what I want to do is get some author-written sample lists for things that are not covered in the book out there pretty quickly over the next couple of months, and those will go on the Mogsy Makes website page as well as the Facebook page, because it's not going to be a Facebook only thing for those that don't. Thank you. There's the picture. The logo and picture are about to change on there, but the address will be the same, because I've actually got myself a proper design logo by a proper graphic designer type for a change. But yeah, so I want to put some paired stuff out there really quickly, just so essentially say, here's how we played late medieval in play testing. Then we'll have a discussion about supplements. The very likelihood is that we'll get a campaign supplement with scenarios out in the new year. The format for all these is very, very likely to be PDF, because it's very easy to get out round about the world. You can get it the day it's released. You can get it cheaply and printed on demand locally if you want to do that. And it doesn't have all the logistical hassle of shipping books across the world that Rich is enjoying in his kitchen at the moment. Yeah, I think an Arthurian supplement or campaign would be very, very likely, and El Cid as well. Obviously, 2 of my mastermind specialist areas I get, and then we'll look at where we go beyond that.
Okay. Yep. You sent me a picture. I'm going to ask, because this is obviously just down the road. But this is Sutton. This is Sutton Hoo.
Yeah, we're going back to Sutton Hoo next year. This is actually I had some brilliant times doing shows and running Midgard, but best thing I've done gaming wise in the last 2 years is going out to Sutton Hoo. Talking before the show, we were talking a bit about that wargaming malaise that you tend to get. It's very easy to forget we're living in a golden age of wargaming where we've got all this stuff on the internet. And we're almost overwhelmed by it, actually. But running event, I've been running with friends a wargaming the Age of the Anglo-Saxons Day at Sutton Hoo in July over the last 2 years. It's all on my blog. You can go and find it. And we're on again in the last weekend of July next year. And we basically do Anglo-Saxon battles next to the Sutton Hoo ship mound. And it doesn't get much cooler than that, really. Yeah, and I love doing this. I'm going back to do this next summer in 2025. And really, really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. We use a very, very simple set of rules for that, even simpler, called a mead price, which I may spend some time getting into a more published format at some point. But we'll see how the whole Midgard things go. Lardy Days. I'm going to be doing a number of Lardy Days and shows. I mean, the Lardy Days, popped into CrackCon a few weeks ago at Board and Swords. Very, very similar atmosphere. You have people running themed games with people booking in to play those games. So here's me running Trojan Wars at BritCon in August. I can't do them all, but there's loads of the playtest group and keen people who want to go out there and run Midgard games and so forth. This is what I see, though, as being the natural public environment for Midgard is a games day of some description where you turn up and play a themed game, maybe with your figures, maybe with somebody else's, where you're playing a narrative campaign or whatever, rather than a head-to-head tournament. Yeah,
that is absolutely awesome. And just to few more battlefield tours in order.
Yeah, there's me and Guy Bowers actually from WSS. That's near the place where my great uncle was shot down in 1917 with our tour guide and his maps. I'd like to get out on the road again. We haven't done a World War One tour for a few years, and I noticed Alex from Storm of Steel have been to Verdun recently, and that really got my juices going. But yeah, need to do this.
Absolutely
lovely.
And I this you sent me this, and I that's just ace. I was
qualify as weird shit.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the Cling kit. I did a whole podcast about this a couple of months ago. I've got a side project running to do the battles between the Tlingit, a native tribe that lived in Alaska and on the northwest Pacific coast of Canada, and their armed encounters with the Russians in the 1790s and the 1800s. I'm just going to do some of this. I'm going to use Rebels and Patriots, I think, as rules for it.
Awesome.
But yeah, I need to do some other stuff as well, whilst, obviously Midgard is becoming a commercial proposition at the moment. You've got to keep playing games. I don't,
you get stale otherwise.
Become a broken record.
Absolutely. Well, look, we're well into overtime, but I just want to say no, thank you, because that's a new record. We hit the record. So you, James, you now hold the PCP record. So that's 205 people who tuned in. I don't know how many of those were grannies and cats and things when I put it out, but
we'll take them.
There we go. So thank you so no, but seriously, thank you so much for coming on. There's quite a few comments that I starred in here where people are saying that they haven't been this excited about a release for quite a long time, and I think the three of us echo that as well. It's very rare that all of us on the PCP buy into something new or want to do something, but all of us have been talking about it. There's ideas of what was it, Dom? 2026 Trojan War CrackCon,
absolutely.
It's no. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And also thank you to everyone who has popped in and watched this. We are back next week with Dom, and we're joined by Andy from Friends of General Haig. So we're going to be looking at lots of more photos and big games. But Andy, you're going to have to label all your photos. You're going to have to get them in pre-sorted.
You're going to have to up your picture game now, Andy.
None of this random shit where we want it pre-ordered anymore. But no, guys. Anyway, thank you so much. Of course, just remember we are sponsored by Bash. Thank you if you're watching on the replay. You can find all the links over to Mogsy Makes, Two Fat Lardies, all of our channels and all of that down below. Go over and check out the Midgard Facebook group. And also remember to come womble along and join the PCP Facebook group, where I think there's going to be quite a lot of Midgard posting going up over the next few weeks. Dom and I are going to be at Warfare this coming weekend on Saturday, probably after I've had a thorough thumping in the Wars of the Roses on Friday. If you see us, do come and say hi. We look forward to he's 40 quid lighter. But that's awesome. James, thank you again so much for taking the time.
You are welcome. Pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me. Cheers. If you post any questions below, I'll try and answer them over the next few days. But yeah, life is pretty busy. That's very keen to do that.
That's awesome.
Didn't Rich Hawes buy the Once and Future King stuff off Warlord the other week as well?
He might have done. I think there's quite a.
Is it the same one or a different
quite a
one?
lot. Like, there
I
might
don't
be.
know.
There's quite a lot of that going. I've seen
There's
quite a lot of that
going
getting posted
round. Yes,
there is. I think I think it might be Arthur's time again with everything in a minute. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you over on Dom's channel next week. Take care of yourselves.
See you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.